Agents will begin their submissions in GuideLink. Their agency and producer information will automatically populate. They will select their state and their effective date. And then they have a couple of ways to search for their classification. They can start typing a name, and it will bring up anything that starts with that name. It is a starts with match first, and if that fails, it's a contains with match. So agents will be able to find their classification very easily. Should they happen to know the classification number, they can type that as well. And that will bring up the classification number matching it. Once they're happy with their classification, they will select it and click Search. It will automatically bring through their primary class code, and then it will generate appetite questions based on that primary class code. We are going to first fail the answers to these questions, meaning we are going to show you what happens when a risk is outside of our appetite. Agent clicks Next, and it will bring up Available Products page. In this example, it is not eligible for a business owner's policy. There is a hyperlink to the button Why. The agent can click on the Why, and it will tell them all the reasons why this particular risk is not eligible. They can review those to learn our appetite. Click OK. And there are a couple of options here. For church, we have other product options. So we do have a commercial package policy available for our church. So it will show you can email your application to commercial@guide1.com, and it lets the agent know that we have a commercial package policy and a workers' comp policy. We do not show commercial auto at this point because we do not write commercial line auto. The agent also has the ability to get a premium indication for select states. So it will give them an open Policy Center button in those states. And again, this will take them directly into Policy Center to get a premium indication for our commercial package policy. They also have the ability to return to GuideLink and start over, or they have the option to go back and adjust the answers to the questions, should they have fat-fingered a response or incorrectly selected an option for one of the questions. We are monitoring their responses. So if you click back, we're going to go ahead and change the classification to a different industry so that we can show you how a different set of questions work. The other reason we're doing this is for churches, all of the appetite questions and eligibility questions are generated on one page. For every other industry, we have got an appetite and an eligibility or qualification page. So you can see that the questions significantly reduced in this example. We will take up to 2 losses in the last 3 years, a max property value, building and contents per location of $5 million, up to 5 locations, 50 employees, max annual gross sales at any location of $6 million, and then the total square footage of the largest building on the submission. For office, 100,000, for restaurant, 7,500, and for all other industries, 35,000. Once the agent is happy with their answers, they'll click Next. And it's going to tell them that we do have available products for them. We have a business owner's policy available, which you can continue through the GoBot portal to quote, and we have a workers' compensation policy. Currently, our workers' compensation policy is not in portal, so they must email the applications in to smallbiz@guide1.com. The underwriter will process that application and get back with the agent. Again, we do not show them auto at this point because we do not write monoline auto. The agent will select the products that they are interested in and click Next, and they will be taken into the GoBot portal. The first screen is the business information page. Agent needs to enter the business name, and their primary business location. We're going to do two things with that information. We're going to standardize the address, and we're going to also make sure that we do not have a policy on file for this insured at the same time. So it's going to tell the agent when they click search that we're verifying their address details, and that's exactly what's happening behind the scenes. Should another account be found, it would pop up a box to tell the agent that. When there's not another account found, it says Create New Account. Agent will click on the Create New Account button, and the business information page expands. Now we need to do a couple of other things. We need to tell the entity type, so that is a drop-down selection, and we need to say what year the business started. The FEIN is optional for business owners. The website is optional as well. There's a section for primary contact information. At this point, it is also optional. They will not be able to release the business without giving us that information, so we will request that information again prior to issuance. The business location is shown, and that is the location that they entered just a few minutes ago, but they have the ability to add a location by selecting the Add Location button. It would bring up a box for them to type in the address and save, and it will do the same thing. It will standardize that address. We are going to do a one location quote, so we're just going to close that box. And then down at the bottom it says, this is your primary class code. Does the applicant have any other business operations that aren't contemplated in that primary classification? They can click yes if they have additional classifications, and it will bring up a box that looks just like the original search box. It starts with match and contains with match, and they can search the same way, either by typing in a description or by typing in a number. They'll click the plus button, and it will add it right underneath the primary class code. You cannot remove the primary class code because the primary class code generates our offering, and our offering is based on either the TIV or the number of employees for the industry. It will suggest coverages that type of risk typically would select, and that's why that primary classification cannot be removed. But any classifications that you've added, if you made a mistake, you can simply click the trash button and delete them. So we're going to change that answer and say, no, we actually don't have any other business operations, and we're going to click Next. This is going to start the submission because once you get off the business information page, an account is created behind the scenes in our Policy Center application. And that means that an underwriter can go in and view the information at this point and assist the agent as needed. So we are now brought to the qualification question page, and a couple of things that you're going to see. On the left-hand side is a quote number. On the right-hand side is an account number, and that's because that information has been created behind the scenes in Policy Center. Also on the left rail, you will see that we are tracking the progress for the agent. It shows them that they're on the eligibility page, and it shows them how many pages they have before they can get to the quote page. This allows the agent to know where they're at in the process at all times. Qualification questions are generated based on the primary class code, any additional class codes that you add, and any industries associated with any of the class codes on the policy. So we're going to answer all of these correctly, but this is the last set of appetite and eligibility questions that determine whether or not we are willing to write a business owner's policy for this particular customer. Once they get past this point, any other questions we ask are based on the underwriting need and not whether or not they're eligible or not. So we're going to click Next and proceed. And it's going to tell them that we're processing their responses, and it's going to bring us to the policy information page. At this point, we're going to need to put in the prior pay plan for who they were insured with before. And then there is a section in the center that is the frequently edited coverages. Those frequently edited coverages are things that we find that agents most often like to change. We are defaulting the answers to those questions, but they have the ability to select the drop-down arrow and change the limit as they feel necessary. It will then change the color to orange to let the agent know that we have made a change. It's also changing the answers to our defaults on the back end, or tracking the answers to our defaults on the back end, so that we can track how often agents are changing these. Maybe we need to change our defaults. So we're going to change that back to what we had. And then you have the what's included in this quote section. If you expand the drop-down arrow for that, you've got two different sections. You've got a must-have and a suggested coverage. The must-have is anything that's included in the base policy form, as well as any mandatory coverages that are required in that particular state or for those types of classifications. The suggested coverages are the offering that I was talking about a few minutes ago. That's coverages that we're recommending for this customer based on the type of customer and based on what we feel their unique needs would be based on prior experience with these classifications. So we're going to expand the must-have section. And then you can see that they have different limits that they can select for some of these coverages, but they cannot remove any of them. So they can select the drop-down. They can make their change as they see necessary. It will change that color to orange, again, to let them know they've made a change. And they can make any changes that they want to. We're going to change it back to where we were at before. But again, none of these coverages can be removed because they are all mandatory. The suggested coverage section looks a little bit different. There is a checkbox beside every coverage because the agent can remove it should they decide that they did not particularly want that coverage. And they would do so by just clicking the little check. They can add it back. And every time they're doing that, we are monitoring in the modified box how often they are doing that. So you will see at the top, it changes to the number changes on the modified box. Again, that's letting the agent know how often these changes are being made. So we're going to close the suggested box. And the last coverage section you have is the additional coverage options. That is the electable coverages, the things that we're not suggesting, but the insured may still need to have. So you can scroll down and see all the coverages, or you can type the coverage name in the box and search, and it will bring up anything that is similar to that. The agent can select it if they want to and add it to the policy. And you will see that it is added it to the suggested coverages section. And because this particular coverage needed an input, it's telling the agent in red, input required, and it highlights the box where we need input. But we're going to go ahead and take that coverage off. And the agent can continue to do that for as many coverages as they want to manually add. Then you have your underwriting questions at the bottom. These are policy-level underwriting questions. They do not determine eligibility, but they do determine whether or not we need to send this to an underwriter or not. So this business may not be eligible for straight-through processing based on the responses to these questions. Once we've answered those questions, we'll click Next, and we will be taken to the location page. And it's telling the agent that we're processing the coverage details, and the reason for that is because they've made some changes and we need to make sure we've accounted for all of that. On the location page, you will see on the right-hand side the location address. And the reason for that is an agent may have several locations that they're adding to a policy, and we want to make sure they understand which location they're working on. If there were multiple locations, they would show as drop-down options under the location section on the left rail. At the top of this, we've got a couple of things that we need to know. We need to know the feet to the water source. We have that frequently edited option, which is the property deductible. The agent can change that should they like. We have also got what's included in this quote. It looks just like it does on the other page, the must-have and suggested, and then underneath that, additional coverage options. But again, these are location-level coverages, and that's why they're on this page. And then at the bottom, you see we've included a building. And the reason for that is our integration has said at this location, we find a building that's 6,600 square feet. The agent can say, yes, that building is ours and continue to the next, or they can say, no, that's not, and they would uncheck it. But we're going to leave it on, and we're going to go to the next page. This is telling the agent we're going to try to see what we can pre-fill from our integrations. And then they're going to be taken to the building page once the pre-fills have all populated. So you can see it's telling you building 1. We've come back. Our integration has told us that it's joisted masonry. The agent can change that if they say that's not correct. We will be tracking the answers that they change to make sure that we don't need to send it to underwriting. And then they have a couple of options. If they need building coverage, they can select the box that says building, and it will expand to show them the building information that we need to capture. So you can see our integration has brought back the year built, the number of stories, and the total building area. Our roof integration is not currently hooked up in a test environment, but the roof information would also populate for them if the integration brought that back. Otherwise, they would need to tell us the roof type. And then they have the ability to tell us if there's been updates to the wiring, the plumbing, or the heating. You can see those are all optional, but if they had updates, they would fill that in. That's how the building coverage works. You can see a little bit lower down, it shows the limit and it shows the valuation. Also from our integration, it's telling us that the building limit is $663,000 and that we're defaulting to a replacement cost. We're going to take the building coverage off in this example. And then you see the business personal property box. Business personal property is required on every BOP policy at a limit of at least $5,000. And you can see we're telling the agent that. And then you also see what's included in this quote is in red again, and it says input required. And that's because there is something in one of those coverages that we need to get additional information from the agent. So it highlights the box in red that we need information on. They would complete that box, and then that will go away. And then they can scroll down. You will see the classification for this building has defaulted to the primary classification on the policy. If the agent had added additional classifications, they would show there. But we need to assign a classification to the building, and we need to say what square footage that classification is. So in this example, if the entire square footage was a florist retail store, they would type in the 6,600. If it was not, then they would type in whatever square footage applied to the florist. They would save that, and then they would be able to add a classification and assign as many classifications as they need to each one of those. Then down at the bottom, you can see that there are some underwriting questions that we need answered. These are building level underwriting questions. Again, they do not determine eligibility, but they determine whether or not we need to send this to an underwriter or not. And then the agent has the ability to add a building. So if there were additional buildings that were not returned from our integration, they could click on the Add Building. It would bring up a box for them to do that. We're going to say this is a one location, one building policy, and we're going to click Next. It's going to do the same thing. It's going to process any changes that the agent has made and bring us to our final page. This page is really a catch-all page. It's for blanket, additional named insured, and additional interest. They're not as common, but we wanted to make sure they were all on one screen for an agent to be able to easily find them. If they have any of these, they would click the plus arrow beside it, and it would open up a box for them to complete the necessary information. We're going to say we don't have any of that. We're going to click Quote, and it's going to take us to our quote page. This tells the agent that it's generating the quote. So now we're on the quote page. At the top, it tells you your total premium. There's a general information section which reminds them of the customer that they've quoted. If they had put the customer contact information on the business information page, it would show in the center, and then the agency information is on the right. Scrolling a little bit down, it tells them that they've quoted a business owner's policy at a 1-year term, the liability limits that they quoted, reminds them again of the total premium. They have a couple of options here. They can click the View Quote Proposal, which will bring up a PDF. We're not going to do that, but it will bring up a PDF of their quote, view all the coverages that have been quoted on this, save it, email it to the customer, or save it to their desktop. They have the ability to edit their quote. So if they wanted to do that, they would click on the little pencil. It will open up the quote again for them to edit any of the coverages that they would like to change, and then they would be able to save that and view that additional quote proposal and save that one. Down at the bottom, we tell them that they might be eligible for additional product lines. We show them the workers' compensation again, and we show them the business auto at this point. Because at this point, we're pretty certain it's not going to be a monoline policy, so we're willing to show them the business auto. We give them the email address to send those in to smallbiz@guide1.com because those lines of business are not currently in a portal. Once the agent is satisfied with everything on the quote page and they are ready to proceed, they will click the Final Underwriting Review and Purchase button. And what's going to happen when they do that is it's going to run through our responses to those underwriting questions and make sure that there are no underwriting issues that need to be reviewed by an underwriter. If there were, they would receive a message that says right underneath the total premium, this needs to go to an underwriter and has been referred to an underwriter. And the agent will be able to track the progress of that in their dashboard. They will also be notified by the underwriter once it's ready and released back to them in the portal to be able to proceed. They will have to click the Final Underwriting Review and Purchase button again at that point, but it will then take them to the billing page. It will not run through those issues again. But this one did not have any of those underwriting issues, which means this is a straight-through processing policy. It means no underwriting involvement is necessary based on the responses to the questions and the type of risk being quoted. So it's got the billing information, and right now it's set to bill to the customer at the address you gave us, but we know that sometimes we need to send a bill to a different address. So they can click on the Add Bill To and select a different person or company and a different street address. They would add that information, and that will change where the bill goes to. But we're not going to do that in this example. Then they can scroll down and look at the payment information. We're defaulting to monthly, and it tells them what that down payment is. But the agent can change that to a different type, a quarterly, annual, or semi-annual. And every time they change it, it changes the down payment required. We're going to leave this one as an annual policy, and you can see it's requesting the entire amount. Here's where they have to fill in their primary contact information. If they had entered this on the business information page, it would have automatically pulled through for them. But since they didn't, they have to enter it here. It is required to proceed. And then you have the e-signature option. So we're defaulting to e-signature, and it will automatically populate the email address for the insured and for the agent. This means that the agent will receive a notification of e-signature, and it means that the customer will receive an email saying, please sign your documents electronically. Once they do that, their policy documents will be emailed to them. They have the ability to unselect that and say no and receive paper copies. The agent would also then be responsible for obtaining a wet signature on the application. So we're hoping that most agents will leave this as a default to yes. So we're going to change that back. We're going to click Next. This is going to then bring us to the billing account page. If they had selected monthly, what you would see at the top would be for them to enter in their ACH information for the draft. But since we selected annual, it's saying that I understand that I'm going to be billed for that down payment and any subsequent payments based on the payment plan that I selected. The agent is not going to receive that first bill. The insured will receive that first bill and will be responsible for that payment. And then the agent is attesting to all of the information that they've entered is true and accurate. They must select both of these buttons to be able to proceed. We are then going to have the complete purchase button selected. What's going to happen when we select that is it's going to run through the very last integration, and that is our Clue integration. And our Clue integration is automated loss runs. We are verifying what the agent put on the appetite screen for the number of losses in the past 3 years versus what our Clue integration is returning. And as long as there is not a mismatch, you will get this page, congrats on the new policy. If there was a mismatch between the two pieces of information, the agent would be informed of that, and they would be told that an underwriter needs to look at it. So that would be a message that would pop up for them on that complete purchase page telling them that, and they would be required to get that underwriting approval before they could proceed. But this one did not have any issues between what we put on the appetite and what our integration returned, so it's congratulations on a new policy. So it tells them the general information in the top, the customer number, their contact, and the agency. It reminds them of their total premium. It shows them the period that they are on, which is a 1 year, the payment plan that they selected, and then the price again. And then there is a button for the agent to view their policy documents. And that would be they could open that up and view their application and their deck page. The agent will also be able to view that information through their dashboard, and we will show you that in a separate video. But this policy has been issued. There is nothing else that needs to be done. And the customer, because we selected e-signature, will get that email requesting the signature and then get their policy documents. The agent can then move on to their next piece of business.